Let's go, let's move side to side, let's go. Let's go, let's move side to side, let's go. Let's go, let's move side to side, let's go. Let's go, let's move side to side, let's go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Blue Otter Draft League. I am When It Rains, and joining me tonight, we actually have Chung Selmo, who I was casting with yesterday for Blue Otter Premiere, and is now, I was filling in for Ferris, now we have Chung filling in for Becky. Got the back-to-back Run It Back casts, and tonight we have the Raiders versus the Skeletons. Hopefully a fun matchup. The Raiders have been doing very well in their season. The Skeletons... some ups and downs. Definitely had some fraudulent expectations thrust upon them. They did win last week, but as any of our viewers know, the Snakes are not the greatest feat. However, if they are able to take out the Raiders here, I think they're gonna prove the accusations wrong. Not complete frauds, but if they lose, then it's not looking good for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders, they have been having a good season so far. They did lose last week to Ronin, actually, putting them at a 3-1 record. Kind of not where I think they would want to be. I think they'd want to still be 4-0 looking towards that match versus the Wizards later in the season. But definitely the Skeletons on a little bit of a slide now, being 2-2. I think this matchup specifically was so hyped up coming into the season once the teams were drafted that I remember this was chosen as the stream match before anything else was even picked, just because of how hyped both of these teams were. I know Raiders, they were able to get their week 1 win when they had this fraud named Chung Selmo subbing in jungle for them. So they can carry that guy. I think they can, get back on the right track, especially with AFK Boulder, having the reins there. I think he does a very good job at prepping when it comes to important matches and stuff like this. But I think if anybody can match them really well besides Ronins that we already saw is the Skeletons. I think names to paper, this is a very close matchup in every role, especially in that mid lane between Neversaw and Bob Robertson. I think that's going to be a very interesting matchup to look at, including the bot lane of Enders versus Ixie. I think that is another hype matchup. I know there's a little bit of beef between the two of them, always thinking they're better than the other one. So I mean, it's going to be determined tonight who actually is the better AD carry here between Enders and Ixie. It's going to be a really good matchup tonight. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, and we can already see the Panflex coming out, something that we've seen a lot from the Raiders in the past couple weeks. Skeletons opting for something which is very, very obvious. I don't think, the Udyr, we're really flexing that. That doesn't need a Iconic Classic. We have the Misfortune as well, something that we do see a lot of. So pretty standard, all things considered. If we see the Corki picked up, that's sort of that matching early game pressure in bot lane. And then we maybe see either the Braum to sort of round out that bot lane, not as aggressive, but very good into the Misfortune. Something they could take away, has been seeing a lot of play, or could just opt to see a mid laner instead and sort of hold that Pantheon as a sort of support jungle flex that we've been seeing a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much Raiders are actually going to flex this Pantheon, considering they do have Spartans as their jungler. This is his strongest champion. And I think especially in this matchup in particular against Iconic, you want that comfort for you jungler, because that's the biggest rank discrepancy in this game is that jungle role. I do think Spartans has been a super solid jungler so far for the Raiders. He's really been doing a good job doing his job, but it could always be a little bit hard to try to, swing up and into that harder jungle matchup. So I think getting that comfort for him is really important. I do like this Cho'Gath pickup. I'm gonna say it once again. It could be this AP Cho'Gath. I know Neversaw has been playing it in solo.
I was about to say, if anyone's gonna do it, Neversaw, she's the one to pull it out. So hopefully we get it. We do see the Gnar answer. So there is a much better chance of this going mid now after seeing that counter pick. This might have been a bait. The Skeletons not really knowing about this, not doing their scouting prep. Maybe sending that Narpton to the top lane when it was never intended there in the first place. We'll have to see. I know Juan also plays a lot of those tanks, so would not be surprised to see it go either of these locations. And yeah, like you said, Spartan, big Pantheon player, but has been practicing a number of other things if they do want to go for this hyper-aggressive bot lane with the Pantheon Corki. The Pantheon support is something that we've been seeing a lot more of recently with the Blood Song Rush, and going for that sort of tankier build. You got the Dead Man's Plate. The utility of also being able to get feats and then get the upgraded swiftness boots just gives you so much roam potential. So we will have to see how that ends up. Skeletons, though, sort of locking in champs. Not a lot of flexibility here. Everything that they're doing is completely on the table right now, and I'd imagine we see a mid laner locked in. Although they might be trying to, suss out the rest of Raiders draft, and they're just going to lock in support, just guarantee themselves some safety. You can see they're already banning out a lot of that hard engage. The Malphite ban does suggest that they do know that this Cho'Gath could go mid.
Yeah,
knowing that it's not necessarily locked to top, and can already see a lot of the more safe picks being banned out there, and I like that Taric ban. That also suggests that I think they do want to be more aggressive towards the bot side of the map, especially with that Pantheon.
Yeah, I do have to agree. I really like how the Raiders have been drafting these first three. They have the flex picks of the Pantheon and the Cho'Gath. I think that really benefits them. And like you said, the Skeletons went for a much more linear draft, not really having the flexible champions-wise, because the only flex they had was the Udyr. But locking in the Gnar, you know where each one of those is going. For the bot lane, I do like... One second. Ooh, thought I was gonna sneeze, but I'm good. I do like the Alistair ban that Skeletons did choose to go for. I know AFK Boulder does play that one a lot, and it's a really good pairing with Corki. But this Nami is also a super strong pairing with Corki. It's one of the stronger bottom lanes that you could have with Corki. Besides, if you want to play with that Pantheon, the Tidecaller's Blessing on top of Corki with the Gatling gun already shredding all your armor and MR is really helpful. But now they're going to have to either lock in a top laner here for Juan. The Mbessa already banned away from him. The Malphite as well. I could see him going the likes of a Cassante, or they could just go for a mid laner here for Neversaw, but it looks like they're hovering the Camille now, so that's going to confirm that it is that Cho'Gath in the mid lane for Neversaw. So it's going to be on to Bob here to get a good matchup into that one. It's not something you see a lot, but I assume up in the higher elos of low masters and all that stuff, they're used to seeing this. So I assume that he's going to have something up his sleeve to be able to match well into this. I think Silas can fare well into it at times, just because you do get that good ultimate steal and you can just start getting tankier yourself. But I think Nico is also a really good option in it, because you can just play at that range and keep him away from you. And then you'd also get that super solid engage option on top of the rel engage that you already have. But I also really like that Juan went for this Camille pick, just because he's going to have such good backline access onto both the Nico and the Misfortune now if you can get these flanks and be able to cause such a chaos in a team fight that it can be really hard for Skeletons to want to peel back when 4 out of their 5 champs really want to be pushing forward in these team fights. So really interesting drafts here on both sides. I do favor the Raiders ones a little bit more. I think it can work a little bit better. It can be hard at times, though, if they do get a little bit behind, just because I feel like Pantheon is one of those hyper-aggressive junglers that needs to get ahead early and then stay on that momentum. Otherwise, it kind of feels like he just becomes a stun bot and has no actual survivability in a team fight. So I really think it's going to be on to Spartan here on his main champion to be able to make this work and create enough momentum in this matchup to be the favor for the Raiders here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. The big thing for the Skeletons here, super all in, right? They have a very, very clear decision that they want to do, and not a lot of range to back it up, right? Big Bullet Storm, you want to combo with the Pop Blossom, you want to get the big engages, and if you don't, you're probably going to lose. You just don't have enough gas in the tank after that main engage to sort of keep things going, unless you have a massive lead. So Raiders, a lot of what they're doing, dealing with counter engage, but also having those flank angles, right? Having that wave to stop the engage, having Camille on a flank, having Pantheon on the flank, having Cho'Gath be able to use the knock-up and disrupt it, use the silence. A lot of this is just playing disruption, sort of waiting for the Skeletons to go in and then stopping them when they do, right? Not allowing them to get their combos, not allowing them to get these big sort of wombos off, and being able to sort of dive that back line, right? Get rid of that Misfortune. The Nico would fall shortly after, and it's going to be really hard for, Rel or Udyr to run that down when you have a Nami, a Cho'Gath just peeling for your carries.
Yeah, I mean, Raiders comp really has to get ahead early. Not Raiders, sorry. Skeletons comp really does have to get ahead early, because you have Misfortune and Nico who really spike at this 1 to 2 item mark and then kind of fall off once they hit those 3, 4, 5 items. While the Raiders, they have a Cho'Gath, they have a Camille, which scales super well into late game. How are you going to deal with a Cho'Gath feast and then a second Cho'Gath feast on that Camille queue? So if the Skeletons can't get ahead and drive that momentum and that pressure with the comp that they have drafted for themselves, it can be really hard once you get to like this 25-minute mark when that Baron is spawning, when you're looking for these team fights. If you're not getting that perfectly gauged, like you mentioned, it kind of feels like they're just going to run out of gas in their tank and just have to try to survive what the Raiders try to do on the re-engage and everything like this. I think it's going to be a tough game for both sides just because of how they have drafted so far. I think if Skeletons does get ahead early, they can carry that momentum and get that first game win. But I feel like if there's one slip up, the team that's going to punish it is going to be the Raiders, and they're going to be able to then take that and use it as momentum for themselves to push for that end game and be able to get the win here. It's going to be a tough matchup for both sides regardless, though.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of this is going to come down to that early jungle pressure and seeing if they can transition that through the mid lane, get those early objectives, really play, because it does feel like the team that snowballs is going to be the team that wins. There's not a whole lot of comeback potential for these teams, as a lot of what they're doing is based off item value, right? Based off these item spikes, the gold value. The same levels in kit doesn't really apply as much.
Yeah, I do have to agree. I think it's going to be really, really interesting how these first couple of minutes are going to be played out by both sides here, but I believe we do have them in the in-game draft, so that means we're going to jump to a short break here while we wait for the spectator delay. We'll see you once we get onto the Rift for game number 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back onto the Rift for Game 1 of our series for the Raiders versus the Skeletons up in the Sapphire division. Already, we're seeing the Hail of Blades We're seeing the Cho'Gath. We're seeing it finally. We complained about it yesterday, but now we have it. Other interesting things to note, we are seeing the Glacial come out from the Nami and the first strike for the MF. Going to be able to just walk himself out there. There wasn't a lot of pressure just because those early levels, there's not a lot of CC, right? Juan taking the W, Spartan probably taking the Q to be able to clear, so you're not going to be able to get those crazy full engages for the first blood.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
Chief knows though. Oh, the crash down does manage to hit. Gonna force the flash at a boulder early on, and that's not what you want to see going into this MF rel lane.
yeah, it's really going to be a rough lane now just for AK Boulder, but I do like that he chose to go for the Glacial Augment. I do think it makes a lot of sense based off of what the Skeletons have drafted. It's going to be really good in a team fight because 4 out of the 5 members really want to be in that melee range, and that path of slow and bonus damage that your team gets to do on that is actually going to be really impactful once he hits those bubbles or hits a big tidal wave, and it's going to be very impactful. It also gives him some really good rune options. You can see that he went for the Hex Flash here, which you can make some really interesting plays with Nami of doing like a Hex Flash bubble that a lot of teams probably would not be expecting. So I definitely think it's an interesting choice. Would I have gone it? Maybe personally not, just because I haven't played it, but a bit of trading down here. We see how much damage you take as the rel if you do get that crash down on, because of that Gatling gun that Corki does have at the early level, shredding your armor and everything like that. Chief already going to have to pop a pot there, and definitely not what you want to have in this lane after you burn AFK Boulder's Flash at level 1.
Yeah, and being able to sort of sustain up with that Nami lane as opposed to having the rel, you do get that extra sustain, but it also means that, although a lot of damage came down, things like this can happen where the Corki just get a bunch of bursts, and you just don't have that same level of sustain as the Nami Corki, right? So if you engage, you better be doing a significant chunk, and you better be able to back it up soon, or you're going to get out sustain. They're just going to heal up all that damage, and now you're actually on the back foot despite that great engage, right? You're not able to get that all in unless you have the jungle pressure, so Chief's going to have to be a bit careful, probably play this lane a bit safer, unless the Iconic is down on the spot side of the map.
Yeah, and I also really like that you can see that, and Ianders did pop that barrier early when they were trading at level 1, so he does get to have a bit more of health comparative in the laning, just especially because he is sitting on both those pots. We see him pop both right there, but also with the Nami, if you do pop that barrier early, you just get to have more health throughout the lane now. So I do like that he chose to go for that aggressive option when going for that level 1 trade. But we saw in the mid lane for a little bit, never saw in a bit of pressure, have to sit under their tower. But I say that Juan is looking for something up here in the top lane.
Yeah, we'll have to see if it leads to anything. Valka has to be careful and jump away, but nothing quite yet. Maybe baiting. Iconic is up here. Eden maybe looking for something, but it is going to be the collapse from Rob Robertson. Spartan putting up the shield, going to try and run himself out. The stun not quite landing, but a flash forward from Iconic means that Spartan is going to be giving up first blood, and it's going to be the Skeletons that walk away with that kill.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just the issue of having this Cho'Gath in the early levels against the range of the Nico. She does have better wave clear in the first couple of levels before you get that level 6 on Cho'Gath and have a bit more AP built up where you're instantly clearing those backline minions with your Q, with your Rupture. So we saw that Bob Robertson had the early lane pressure and was able to roam over to help his jungler on that first Scuttle Crab, because they're both on the top side, and really ended up being a bad play just because Spartans didn't know that Iconic was up there, so because of that, it's a 2v1. He burns flash, goes down for it. So I do like how, Skeletons have been playing this early game around that, but otherwise the lanes have been a little bit rough here. You see Ixie's already down 20 CS in this lane. It is a rough time down here, and you see Spartan is looking for a dive, but we can see on the minimap that Iconic is on their way to counter. The Spartans could actually be in a lot more trouble than we think.
Yeah, Iconic versus Spartan in the 1v1. Chief and Exie going to be first in the rotation, and they're going to get the crash down, get a lot of damage down onto Spartan, who just wasn't expecting E to be down there so early. Ixie with no mana, but Ianders and Boulder are not going to be able to get anything extra. You can see Bob Robertson already making his way down the river, just in case he needs to back him up, but yeah, not a great early start for Spartan, who already has been giving a lot, and Edaconic already on the Ashes with all of this clear advantage. Going to be very, very hard for Spartan to deal with, as he's already going for the invades just 5 minutes in.
Yeah, and the big issue with that play is the wave state that was for the Raiders. They weren't pushed up to the tower yet, not able to make the dive work, and because of that, Ixie goes, I'm already down CS in this lane. Me and Chief can make this roam over here and make this play and pick up a kill for ourselves, or an assist at least. And now they're going to look to go for another play bot. We know Edaconic is right behind them.
Yep, now the gank coming through. Ianders has to be careful, but he's not going to be able to get it out. Flash over the wall with the barrier. Should be keeping him alive for a while, and they do make it out. Cost of both summoners. However, Chief also being Chief also using the flash there does mean that you have that advantage. Gonna be really nice to not have that route, especially on that level 6 spike. Not having that immediate flash to be able to go for the bullet storm is not bad. And the fact that you make it out alive, you're very happy with that trade this early on.
Yeah, and I mean, AFK Boulder still had the heal if it was absolutely needed in the lane. A nice barrier usage by Ianders to get low and then be able to use it to mitigate that impactful damage that probably would have caused him to go down there, and then a nice flash over the fat wall. We see many people fail that a lot of times. But then, in the meantime, Grub started up. Bai never saw it. Did get one of the feast stacks onto one of those Grubs. So, feeling happy about that. Spartans picks that up for his team. Got to try to get himself back into this game somehow. He's a little bit behind, and that's just the nature of this matchup of the Udyr and Pantheon. Udyr's always going to clear so much faster than you, so you have to make the ganks work.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're not able to make those ganks work early on as the... Bleh, I'm forgetting it. I was going to say as the Spartan, but that's just the Pantheon.
That is correct, though. He is a Spartan.
I mean, yeah, he is based off it. If you're not able to get the early ganks off as Pantheon, your early game becomes significantly harder.
Oh, no.
Same with the mid game. Oh, no. Okay, spotted out by Spartan, but doesn't know Chief is here. Might try and walk in for the smite. Now Chief gonna be able to land the stun and the crash down. And Bob Robertson already walking past the tower as a minion to get another kill, claiming the feat of warfare and putting Spartan down 0-3 at the start of this match.
Yeah, that just doesn't feel good. You saw that the red buff was started, and he thought he could just walk in and get the steal, but Chief being there was able to make that work. Bob Robertson on the roam over as well. And that's all 3 kills here onto Iconic on this Udyr, who can be an issue for this team in the later game. He has such good sticking power just because of that ultimate getting the AoE slow, and he does do a significant amount of damage as well, so it could be really hard for Ianders to play this game in team fights if Iconic is this strong, especially at this point in the game. It's really going to have to come down to these team fights at objectives with the rest of the team. Spartan going to really have to look to just farm up, get the camps that he can, and then look for these plays once he hits that level 6 and has that Grand Skyfall to be able to have that global pressure whenever their team is looking for something.
Yeah, and using that global pressure is going to be really important, but we do have a fight down here. The bullet time coming out, and the barrier coming through from Ixie to keep him alive. Now finally, Spartan in the bot lane needs to find something. Edaconic already down here. Thankfully, Spartan going to be able to get back on the board, though. Chief going to try and flip him. The shield used. Chief not going to be able to land that follow-up shatter, so it will just be a 1-for-1 down there. Iander's going down, but Spartan picking up the kill is very useful because he really needs it to get back into the end of this game. If Edaconic had a successful counter gank there, it feels like it's all but over for the Raiders. Having your Pantheon be down 0-4, having everything fail, just would not be good. But he will pick up that kill, will send Ixie back to the fountain. So things, you know, still not the greatest, but evened up a little bit more. Most of that lead right now being in that jungle.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw the bot lane that Ianders was getting a lot of pressure there onto Ixie, but got engaged on by Chief. And Ixie, having that barrier advantage, was able to just sit there and full channel the bullet time. The bubble out of AFK Boulder just missing to cancel that one. So Ianders eats a full bullet time and ends up falling. But like you said, Spartans, we talked about him hitting level 6 and having that Grand Skyfall, effectively uses it right away. It's similar to like Nocturne. You got to make this first ultimate count for something, and he does. He picks up the kill. I thought he was going to go down once Chief got that flick back, but Iconic just not in close enough range to be able to follow it up, so able to get himself out there. So Raiders finally get on the board. They get themselves a kill. Maybe he didn't want Enders to go down there, but he gets the assist at the end of the day, and he gets Spartan back into this game into some relevancy, but now it's just going to be on the rest of the team to play this one out. We see that Neversaw does have the CS advantage in the mid lane right now, but Watt is losing the CS advantage up in this top lane. So it's definitely an interesting the way these lanes have been playing out so far. Definitely not exactly the way I was expecting them to go.
Yeah, and the thing about the Camille into this Gnar matchup, you still lose those early levels, right? It's still a range versus melee, but once you start getting those item spikes, it's a lot easier to fight back, a lot easier to engage on that Gnar, use those couple levels in W's to sort of survive, deal with the wave, and then sort of spike towards that mid-game and deal with it. Ixie has to be a little bit careful, though. Not quite respecting the Corki all-in, being able to just melt you on these early levels. And Ixie, you know, without any items, you're kind of just running MF as this burst carry, especially with the first strike and going these lethality items that we're seeing. So definitely have to be careful. Looks like we're just going to get a grub trade once again, although Dragon's up in a minute, so it's just going to be 3 for 3, and hopefully Raiders playing for that next Dragon, although they might be trying to get a dive down here. Spartan is spotted on the ward. Gonna try and clear out this wave soon enough, and you can see Bob Robertson already just hovering down there just in case they need to back it up.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the issue. Like, this is how strong the Corki Nami lane is. It feels like you can't really do anything as Misfortune and Rel unless you get that perfect engage. But that's also the just... Oh, never saw?
Ooh, with the movement, dodging everything.
A little bit of baiting. Oh, Boulder.
Boulder with the wave in.
Yeah, he was waving to never saw. That's what he was doing. That's what he was doing.
Oh no. Oh, Spartan. What are you doing? Okay. I thought that looked like it was going to go a lot farther than it did. I was very worried for a second.
I was just worried in general. That's 2 big ultimates that were used there by Raiders, and this Ocean Dragon is on the Rift in 10 seconds. They have no Tidal Wave now. They have no Grand Skyfall. Spartans is going to have to take this recall because he got so chunked out there. So this is going to be the Dragon advantage right now to the side of the Skeletons. They're going to be on this immediately as it spawns, so Raiders just going to be conceding this one. Definitely some interesting choices coming out there by the side of the Raiders. But yeah, it's going to cost them the Dragon at the end of the day. Nobody does go down, thankfully, after maybe a little bit of a misplay, a little bit of a fumble there, but they're still down almost 2,000 gold here at this point in the game, so really going to have to start looking to find a way to get themselves back into this one.
Yeah, and, you know, the main thing you think is it probably has to start with that Herald. The Dragon's not going to be up for another 5 minutes. You got to be playing around, you know, this sort of mid-top side, maybe the bot side, but you need to find an advantage somewhere because everywhere's relatively even. The Corki's up a bit of CS, that's nice. Top lane, down about 10 CS, but not the end of the world. Mid lane, relatively even as well. Now we see another engage, the flash forward, but it was just AFK Boulder trying to back up. Now the stun here, they're getting a lot of damage down onto Chief, but the aftershock keeps them safe. Beautiful bullet time into the corridor. Never saw picking up that first kill, but it's going to be returned right back. Spartan going down. Now Iconic trying to chase down Enders, but he is not going to be able to do it. You can see Neversaw trying to land the knockups, trying to see what he can find. All right, she lands it. Ixie has got to be careful, but nothing quite yet. A nice wave comes out, though, finally. They're going to try and chase it down. Hits the flash. Ixie using both of the summoners to be able to get out there. But Iconic and Bob Robertson not quite going to be able to back up the rest of the team. It's just going to be a 1-for-1 as they walk out, and both teams are generally happy with what they've managed to secure.
Yeah, and I mean, with how that started out, I thought that was going to be so much worse for Raiders. They caught AFK Boulder, but he had a nice flash away from the engage out of Chief, who popped the Magnet Storm immediately. And then Bob Robertson, with a big pop boss from flank, got the flash ultimate onto 2, but the 2 that he got ended up not going down there, and they were able to turn it around, picking up a kill for themselves. I believe only Spartans went down in the exchange for that one. So, I mean, they lose the red buff, but they pick up some much needed gold for themselves. Never saw another Feast stack, I believe. She did get the ultimate onto a carry there. I think it was onto Chief. So stacking up on this Cho'Gath early, they're already on the upgraded Soul shoes, and they have the Shurelya's Battle Song already. So starting to become that, you know, movement speed Cho'Gath that has that sticking power that we know from this AP Cho'Gath build, but you still got to be worried about how strong Iconic and even Bob Robertson are at this point. You have the Proto Belt, you have the Leandry, so they have such a good engage and sticking power out of these 2 characters.
Yeah, and using that sticking power is really important. You can see Neversaw trying to get away. Tanky enough, but it is going to be brought back in with that Magnet Storm. Has to be careful. A nice root from Bob Robertson, but the rest of the team there to back it up. AFK Boulder just going to give the speed out. But yeah, like you said, that sticking power is immense, and if they want to just dump everything, they're going to be able to. AFK Boulder not respecting the invade there as he just walks to his death. Bob Robertson picking up another kill, and the Skeletons have just been relentless with this pressure.
Yeah, the way Iconic has been forcing the team to play around this map has been so impressive. Literally invading Spartans anytime he tries to go for anything, and Chief always there to back him up because Islanders has the pressure onto Ixie, but Ixie not going down every time this engage comes, and I say that, and here it is.
Yep, finally coming out. You can see, just a matter of time. Ixie, able to return a lot of damage, but yeah, Islanders and Spartans do way too much for Ixie to deal with, especially without the summoners. So it's going to be a pretty easy kill picked up there. And potentially the tower, we'll have to see. It is feats picked up for Skeletons, so the tower is not really going to matter as much, but still a nice consolation prize. It's going to give Islanders a lot of gold. You're going to be able to get out of there. And having a lot of gold on this Corki is one of your big win conditions. Now Wancake has to be careful, though, on jumping out, using that hook shot. Not quite going to land the snow, but it should just be a matter of time. Edaconic not quite going to be able to land it, though, as Wancake flashes over the wall, and Ida unable to follow without a flash of zone.
Yeah, and I mean, the big thing that came out of that play, even though Juan did have to burn flash, is that Islanders picks up a kill and gets the first turret solo gold for himself. So this Corki is really going to be strong. He still is holding on to that 30 CS lead over Ixie, and now that they're putting more gold into his pocket, that's exactly what you want if your carry is going to be this quick. But now Spartans is in so much more trouble once again.
Yeah, and Spartan looking to be the one down. The Scorch popping. Ixie just needs one more auto. Finally going to land it. You can see Neversaw TPing in, but Boulder's already caught up by Bob Robertson. And it's going to be 2 kills over to the Skeletons. Neversaw just trying to get something in return, but just has to walk away, realizing that there is nothing left in that fight.
Yeah, I mean, Boulder did get a nice bubble to instantly cancel out the bullet time that was coming in from Ixie, but there's no really follow-up damage if Neversaw doesn't hit anything. We saw Bravo Robertson hit a nice tangling barbs to stop anything that was coming out from the Cho'Gath. So really just ends up being a 1-for-1 trade there at the end of the day. I mean, sorry, an 0-for-1 trade. Only person going down was Spartans. Tried to sit at the back of the Dragon Pit. Maybe nobody would notice him, but still gets picked up by Bob Robertson on the walk over there. So now, once again, this Dragon is coming up in 7 seconds. Spartans is alive and down here at the spot side, but I think it's going to be so hard for the Raiders to be able to walk in and look for what they're trying to do to contest this Dragon, because we see Neversaw already beat folks down here by Chief and Iconic, but going to just walk away as they get mid-pressure and looking to set up around this Dragon, looking to contest Dragon number 3 here. It looks like we're going to get a full-on 5v5 team fight.
Yeah, Valka does have the TP to try and look for a flank. Neversaw trying to collapse, but is getting collapsed upon a little bit too early. The CC coming down, and you are not a tank, Cho'Gath. Getting melted, failing the flash over the wall, and Neversaw goes down. Chief should be a 1-for-1, though, following shortly thereafter. Juan onto it, trying to land it, but it is going to be the Pop Blossom knocking up both Spartan and Juan as they get taken out. Spartan trying desperately with the shield, is going to manage to land the shutdown, but only until Ixie takes that kill. Now it's just Islanders left with AFK Boulder, but unfortunately without any flash, without any way over that wall, it's just going to be a shutdown going to Ixie, and Skeletons taking the fight 4-2.
Yeah, they just have no real damage to cut through this Udyr at this point. Already 306, building towards the dead man's plate. This Udyr is a problem that needs to be answered by Raiders soon. They need to find a way to be able to shred through him and be able to take him down. And they were struggling with Bob Robertson as well, who positioned really well in that team fight. Neversaw getting caught out a little bit too early in that team fight, walking into that bush. Got collapsed on by the rest of the members of Skeletons. Tried to flash away, throw the flash over the wall, and ends up going down in the end. So it's going to be tough now. They're going to be on this soul point, and it's a Cloud Soul, which is pretty good for the side of Skeletons. But we saw what the Raiders could do with this team comp if it does end up working out for them. They just got caught a little bit too early. Islanders was putting out good damage, but there's just no way right now at this point to shred through this Udyr. They need to set up on these objectives first. They need to be looking for the big Corki poke, maybe some poke from Neversaw from these ruptures that do a significant amount of damage, and then be able to look for the fight on their terms with the Juan flank, or even Spartans getting into the back line with a nice Grand Skyfall.
Yeah, being able to use those ultimates to try and flank, is something we've talked about in draft. It's sort of their main win condition to counter this engage. But if you're just running into the 5v5s, as sort of a battle line, you're going to lose. You don't have the equipment to deal with that. You don't have that front-to-back team comp fight that you would want if you were saying maybe you had like the Jinx, maybe had a tank Cho'Gath, you had sort of that bruiser top laner. The more standard things that we expect. But if you're going to be running this movement speed Cho'Gath, if you're going to be trying to close these gaps, a lot of what you're trying to do is sort of disrupt that backline when they're trying to use those tools to engage, when they're trying to position around these fights, and being able to stop them from getting what they want, rather than sort of having that solid game plan of your own. A lot of what they want to do, a lot of what the Raiders are trying for is these disruption techniques, but They just haven't been able to figure that out in these past couple fights.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that we've been seeing, just not in these team fights, but in the map in general, is the difference between having a Nami and having a Rel. It feels like AFK Boulder has always been with Enders in the lane, and just for most of these team fights, while Chief has been paired up with Iconic, not with Ixie, and looking for these plays around the map. We saw how far behind they were able to put Spartans because of it. And then in the team fight, this Rel with the engage options just causes so much disruption with that Magnus Storm, with that crash down, and now Boulder is probably going to go down here. Never mind.
Nice re-engage coming through. Itaconic getting very low, but a beautiful bullet time keeps the jungler alive. Power of the flank coming through. It's going to be Neversaw picking up that first one. Juan going in, using the ultimate. Now it's just Ixie left alive, getting run down by Neversaw and Juan Cake. Iender's there to back it up, and is going to land it with that Q. On the backside of the fight, Bob Robertson was able to pick up AFK Boulder, who wasn't able to join the rest of the team in time. But it's Valken and Bob Robertson running down towards that bot side. Don't think they're going to be able to close the gap just yet, but that's still a 2 for 3 in favor of the Raiders, and they're very happy with what they can get there. Big shutdowns, big kills coming onto a lot of those carries, and 2 minutes and 30 seconds to Soul. I think that's exactly what you want to say.
Yeah, and we just saw there that if Enders gets to sit still and, you know, get the full Gatling gun channel onto Iconic, he can shred through him. Did so much damage, and then Spartans with the ult-in was almost able to take down Iconic himself, but got stunned up and then taken down by the bullet time from Ixie. But Juan and Neversaw there to back up their team were able to turn that play around. Only Boulder goes down for their team, so Raiders are still fighting back. They haven't given up on this game yet. They just need to be able to contest for this Cloud Soul, and then if they get a full like 5-man ace, or even 4 for 5, or sorry, 1 for 5, only one person goes down, they could even turn it into an Otacon and really turn around the momentum in this game. It's just going to be on if they are able to position correctly before this dragon and aren't using crucial ultimates like we saw at that dragon number 2, and are able to get the fight on their terms that we saw there in the mid lane.
Yeah, and if they're able to get the fights that they want, they're able to land these flanks, they're able to come in from the side, that is their big advantage. But trying to fight for vision into skeletons with this huge lead is going to be a really hard thing to do, especially when you have people like Ida just running down, doing so much damage here. Neversaw already at a 3rd HP, has to be careful, and is going to be forced to back. Does have the TP, thankfully, and does have that empowered recall. But it's still, can already see just how hard it is for them to sort of fight into this vision, fight into skeletons who have full priority on this bottom side of the map, and Boulder goes for the ward, but is going to die in the process. Ixie gonna land a quick double tap to take it out. TP coming through for Valka, and they are 5 strong, running for this Otacon. Being able to get that revive pretty much secures their fate too. It's gonna be really hard for Raiders. Maybe they go for the steal, but, you know, skeletons, this is their soul to lose right now. And Juan, just sort of split pushing in the top side while all this is happening is really the best you could hope for, right? That's sort of the consolation prize, is the tier 2 tower gold. And you can already see Spartan and Ienders moving up to try and back it up, try and get whatever they can. The Raptors, the Scuttle, just sort of consolation prizes, realizing that they're not going to be able to contest the rest of these fights.
Yeah, and I mean, the big issue that the Raiders have in this draft is they don't really have anybody who can face check these books into Iconic. I think Neversaw is just going to end up going down here.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The flash comes through. Itaconic getting run down, but it's just the withdrawal. It is going to be flash for flash. So, you know, not the end of the world, but still, it's just so hard to deal with it, right? Itaconic so far ahead. Bob Robertson strong as well. Just all the carries are doing so well. And the backup is just so strong that it's really, really hard to actually deal with any of the members, much less a full team fight. We do see the engage coming through from Spartan, trying to go in with that Grand Starfall, trying to melt down this dragon, see if they can get the smite in time, and they will manage to get the steal, taking away the soul from skeletons and keeping Raiders' dreams alive for just a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's big. AFK Boulder is also going to go down here.
AFK Boulder's dead, but
yeah.
You know what? You're happy with it. Shouldn't have been up that far, but Spartan managed to get that soul secure. That was massive. If they did not get that, it all would have been over. You know, would have had really no way. But they just bought themselves 5 more minutes, and that's really the best you can hope for right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of what it feels like Spartan has to do at this point in the game, kind of just sacrifice themselves for these steals. And was able to pick that one up, able to outspite Iconic, but Islander still does do a lot of damage. It's just like he has to be able to space correctly just because of the sticky power and engage options.
Juan coming down here. Bob Robertson gonna get put into the withdrawal. Now a nice prison coming through, but a good bullet storm from Ixie stops the rest of it. Valka going in with the boulders to try and land the slows. But it's going to be Skeletons trying to walk out. They are going to use that movement speed. Spartans finally back. A beautiful wave to catch 2 members. Chief going to barely dodge out on it. Try and get the movement speed, but a nice double knock-up from Neversaw. Going to force the withdrawal out of Valka. Chief can see Ediconic this whole time, just taking away the Krugs, but should be able to get out with Udyr's movement speed. However, taking a lot of those withdrawals, and, well, it's not the full shutdown gold. The little bit of 200s that going over to your carries is very, very useful, and it's going to help a lot going into this Baron spawn that Raiders are probably going to be forced to fight if they want to hang on.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been really tough for Raiders to do anything in this game, but we saw there that if they do land that one bit of CC, it is able to be followed up really well by the rest of their comp. Like Neversaw hits a knockup, stunned by Spartans, bubble out a boulder, then another knockup by Neversaw. It feels like you can just never actually move in this game, but despite that, the Skeletons carry Bob Robinson and Ixie have been positioning very well. I mean, Ixie only going down 3 times in this game, and despite the relentless pressure that they were under in this lane, they are 8-3-7. They are sitting on a gold bounty. They are super strong right now, and even stronger than Ienders. He is at 3 completed items on this Misfortune, where it's only 1.5 to Ienders. Even though Ienders can shred these carries, can shred through Iconic and get a lot of damage, it can be hard. Oh, they're going for Bob.
Oh no, not again. Bob Robertson has to be careful. Juan Kick, though, using the hook shot to get out. It's Spartan, Juan, and Neversaw all the way up here in the spot side. However, Skeletons have that 4-4. Valka TP'ing to the mid lane to back it up. And it's just a matter of time before Spartan goes down as Ixie picks up the kill. AFK Boulder and Neversaw going to try and speed out of there. The Baron up that you can see. Iender's going to be the first one on that rotation away from Valka. Have to be careful. Juan Kick does as well. Iender's trying to regroup with the team, but not quite going to be able to land the flank. Nice knock up there. Nice wave to land the rest of it. Juan re-engages. Now Ixie has to be careful, but flashing away from the rest of it. However, nice cage traps 2, and it's going to be kills going over for the Raiders. Now, Ediconic managing to pick that one up. Ixie has to be careful with how low he is. Iender's, though, popping very low as Valka does a lot of damage. And kind of underestimating here. The flash comes through, needs the reset, does manage to find the auto onto Ixie. Ediconic has to be careful, trying to run into the bush, trying to delay a little bit of time with that Phoenix stance, and is going to be able to get the burn, and the Leandry is going to be able to take up the kill. AK Boulder has to be careful. The jump from Valka, Ienders has to survive. Nice sidestep, but one more auto from Valka takes it, as Valka carrying the back end of that fight with all of those boulders, all of those boomerangs, and it's Skeletons that end up coming out on top from what looked so good for Raiders, just not quite able to finish it out.
Oh man, they almost turned that play around. Maybe if Boulder had a little bit more CDR, would have been able to get the heal out to keep Ienders alive from the auto from Valka. But I mean, despite being behind that they were able to turn that play into what started out very negatively. They tried to get onto Bob Robertson. A nice W by him to escape from the engage from Neversaw and Spartans. But really well turned around by the side of Raiders. We saw how much damage Enders can actually do if he gets time to free fire and everything that he needs to. And he almost cleaned up that whole fight by himself, but maybe taking a little bit too much damage at the start of the fight was really what was not able to have him clean it up in the end. He had some nice side steps, a good flash, a good barrier, and everything, but it just didn't matter in the end because Valka and Iconic were still at above half HP. It's still a little bit too strong to be able to do that one, but we know Bob Robertson is trying to do the classic Nico play in the mid lane here.
Let's see if they're able to get it. He's going to be able to land a beautiful Pop Blossom into the bullet time. And with both carries taken out, it's going to be really hard. Neversaw going to be able to finally pick up one. But Spartan has to be careful. The engage now from Cheech, pulling him back in with the Magnet Storm. Now focusing onto the tower. But Ediconic and Ixie, it's just going to be a matter of time before Spartan dies. Juan Cake still on that split. And it looks like Skeletons want to push for the win.
Yeah, they're going to try for it. I don't think Juan can even defend this one if he does recall. He's got to try his best to do it, but Bob Robertson, the classic Nico play, turned into a minion, catch out the carry, and probably spell the end of game number 1 here for the Raiders. It's going to be Juan against the world here. It's going to be a rough one.
Yeah, it does manage to take out Chief first. A lot of tower damage coming through for Valka, but unfortunately, it's just a little bit too early in the game. The damage isn't quite there, and the Nexus is being focused. Ienders and AFK Boulder trying desperately, but they're not going to be able to secure it, and it's going to be the Skeletons that pick up game number 1.
Yeah, and that game really started from level 4 once they did get that first kill onto Spartans at that topside Scuttle Crab, and it just snowballed from there. Iconic was literally on top of Spartans that whole game. He was there for the counter dive, gets the kill there, then invade on the red buff, another kill there, and was just all over on Spartans jungle and the Raiders. And because they really had no true frontliner. It was that movement speed Cho'Gath. Nobody was really able to face check these bushes and able to take a brunt of that damage that Skeletons did have. So it made it really hard to play later in that game. And it was just a masterclass played by the side of Iconic and the rest of the Skeletons to follow suit.
Yeah, and proving themselves, hey, at least even if they don't take the series, at least this game they were proving that they were not fraudulent, putting the pressure on and never letting their foot off the pedal there. Spartan having a pretty miserable game. I know if that was me, I would not be having fun. That is a slash Stefan. I'm just gonna listen to my music. I am not having a great time. But
Yeah.
they showed signs of life. They were never really felt like they were just rolling over, dying, and not trying to make plays. They were trying to get fights. It's just they couldn't really cross the finish line on a lot of them. And I think going into game 2, they're gonna realize a lot of those weak points. They're gonna try and shore them up and try to make sure that what happened this game doesn't happen again.
Yeah, it's gonna have to just be like a full reset here for Raiders and look for maybe a few different answers in the draft. I know they really wanted to prioritize that Pantheon for Spartan. Iconic had the answer to it. That Udyr was such a menace in this game. I mean, Volka also played really well on the Snarry in the top side, and Ixie, despite the relentless pressure of this Nami Quickie bot lane, ends up dealing the most damage in the game and ending at 12, 4, and 11. Played a phenomenal game. Really impactful bullet times across multiple members in these team fights. Never really getting them canceled. Only a few times I saw it was stopped by any form of CC on the side of Raiders. So Skeletons really showing what they're worth here, really showing that, hey, we're not frauds. We're really here to stay, and we can compete with the top dogs in, the Sapphire division.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll have to see what both teams end up sort of adjusting for game 2, if they end up adjusting anything at all. But for right now, we're going to cut it to a short break while we wait to get back into the draft for game 2. When we come back, should have an exciting match. Don't forget, Fearless. So a lot of these iconic champions for these players not going to be available. Have to see what happens after the break. All right, and welcome back into draft for game 2. The Skeletons picking up game 1, fighting the fraud allegations. Going to see if they can round it out here in a commanding victory if the Raiders are going to try and mount their comeback.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough game after how game 1 looked. They're going to have to look for a few different answers this time around. I felt like once they got behind, they really could never make their way back, despite having a couple good team fights. It felt like it didn't matter just because of how far that Iconic specifically was on this Udyr, just really able to stand inside the enemy jungle and do whatever he wanted for most of that game. So definitely going to be interesting how Raiders decides to bounce back from this one. I do think them being on the red side helps them a lot, specifically for Never Saw in this mid lane, just because she is a Kassadin player. Kassadin likes being like that R5 pick after seeing what everything on the other side has been picked up already. So could be looking at an angle like that, maybe a strong, really strong counter pick up in that top side for Wand Cake. It's definitely going to be interesting how they adapt and change their draft up on the red side. But for Skeletons, I like what they did in that first game. I like how they played it. I like getting that strong jungle for Iconic paired with a roaming support for Chief. They paired up and played so well off of each other throughout that game, really making plays everywhere. So hoping that they, recreate that and look for that again in this game 2 draft.
Yeah, and we'll see. A lot of those sort of standard champions taken out. You already have the Misfortune gone, the Rel, those sort of combos. The Edaconic special already taken out the Udyr. You can see the ban coming out for the Wukong, the Jarvan as well. So going to be a bit harder to do that, but there's still a lot of champions they could work with. It's just that sort of big wombo combo has a lot of them taken out, the big sort of circles. But you could definitely find a big pick comp, right? Having those Leonas out, having things like Diego, right? Maybe for resets if you really want to lean into this jungle priority. There are lots of ways they could still do this. I do expect to see sort of one of those standard junglers or bot laners picking up as the B1, something that we've seen a lot. The Corki and MF already banned, the Jinx gone, but the Varus is still open. You already have a lot of those picks that could happen the Ashe as well, and it looks like we're just going to see the Ashe coming through, able to use that arrow. Sort of the Ashe Varus have been two of those picks that you see a lot once sort of the comfort goes down, is that being able to use those big ultimates that can help turn fights, especially the Ashe, when you're playing for your jungle, being able to snipe someone from downtown, land a 3-second stun that your jungler is able to just wail on the enemy for is really useful. And it looks like we're just going to see the Varus response as well.
Yeah, and I mean, the Ashe also helps what Iconic wants to do in the jungle with that hawk shot, letting them scout out where that enemy jungler is and be able to know where they can invade and cannot. But also, I do like the Varus pick. It's similar to the Ashe, like you said, those big team fight ultimates, that CC that you can apply for your team, which not a lot of marksmen do get. I think there's only like these two, I think, in the game that actually have CC besides like Neela, but nobody plays Neela really. So I do like the Varus pick. I do think both of these ADKs are in a strong spot, despite Ashe getting those nerfs to reduce the ult damage, because it was a little bit overtuned, if we're going to be honest. But I do like this pick, and I think this Gragas is definitely an interesting hover. I do think it can be good up in the top side for Juan, and it also does cause a lot of disruption in the team fight with that explosive cask, really displacing everybody. And also, it's just a safe side laner, solo laner in the top lane, really never loses a trade just because of his passive, always getting the top off on the health bar. And he does have good wave clear when you do build that cosmic drive, and really can help the team a lot. Also diversify your damage with that AP version. And then a Volibear pickup. I mean, Freljord champions, they all synergize so well together, so wouldn't be surprised to see this Volibear picked up here for Iconic, and hopefully Spartans can find himself a strong counter matchup into this AP jungle of the Volibear.
Yeah, and the Volibear, could be building, that tank with the Sundered Sky, could be going that more hybrid build that we like to see, the Rod of Ages with the Navori Quick Blades, could be going full tank. So the Volibear, a very flexible champion that you can see a lot of. And I like the Braum here, being able to block that cast, being able to block a lot of that Varus damage, the arrow, going to be able to sort of keep your backline safe. And I would imagine that despite being encountered, this Volibear is definitely an Edaconic champion. So I wouldn't be shocked to see it go over towards him. But we'll have to see. It still could be a top side. And it looks like we just want to answer the poke, bully in this Braum with the Karma, go for that Karma Varus, a very, very standard poke lane. And maybe suggesting that we want to go for more of a lethality Varus angle, potentially, depending on how the rest of the draft shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, I still think you can go on hint Varus, even if you do have Karma. Karma can do a brunt of the poke work by herself in the lane. But, I mean, Skeletons just stacking Freljord on Freljord on Freljord. Braum Ash, such a strong 2v2 lane. Once one slow hits, the other one's gonna follow up. Then you're gonna get stunned. It's gonna be really hard. And then Volibear and Braum, also a strong jungle support duo. I mean, once one of the slows hits or stun hits, you're gonna be followed up by a second form of CC, and it feels like you really don't get the chance to move. So Spartan's really gonna have to be aware of Iconic is on this map in this game and not fall to the same place that he did in the last one. But now Kassadin being the hover ban here, I did say it was a never saw champion. I don't know if they would go for it in this draft, but a lot of Kassadin players are confident in their Kassadin, so would just pick it regardless of what the enemy comp has drafted. But I understand why Skeletons would want to ban that one away, get them off of comfort, and push them down a little bit in their champion pool. But we're still looking for a possible jungle pick here for Raiders, because this could be a Gragas jungle or a Gragas top. And same with the Volibear for the side of Skeleton. So we still got a couple flex picks remaining on both sides of the draft, seeing where these all are going to end up at the end of it.
Yeah, and I don't really know why we're banning the Ornn. I don't think that's a good idea. The Ashe, not one of the highest damage. Same with the Ahri. Like, we're banning things that don't really make sense here, right? Why would they go Ornn? If they do, you can just opt into that on-hit Varus, play a more tanky frontline, and you're just going to out-damage the enemy team, right? Same with the Ahri. If they go these low-damage characters without this tank backup, you're going to be able to just win the extended fights through virtue of just having more damage to pump out, right? The on-hit Varus does way more than the Ashe is going to be able to, even with a lead, especially into something like the Gragas that can stack those resistances, that percent damage reduction on the W, has so much sustain and healing that it just feels like maybe we don't really know what we want to do with these round 2 bans. But, I mean, I could be wrong. We could see some adaptations, but it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, I don't feel like Skeletons want to go Ornn, and if they do, I feel like it's pretty free. We're going to see the Gangplank, though, come out. Could definitely be a Wand Cake champion. Could see Neversaw playing that, but I feel like that's definitely a Wand Cake champion up in the top lane.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there. I definitely do think this is the GP top for Juan, and then that is the question of, is this a Gragas mid or is this a Gragas jungle? Because it can be played mid lane. We've seen it in seasons past in professional play and low tier leagues. So I wouldn't be surprised if Neversaw has put in time on this champion and is willing to pick that one. But I do kind of agree with you on the bans that Raiders have gone for in the second phase. I do think the Ashe buffs really help with the damage that she actually does put out in these team fights. They really help this champion actually feel like an AD carry and not just an ultimate bot. So she does do a lot more damage than she used to, but I do kind of agree that you don't want to be banning stuff like this. But if Raiders are going, hey, let's take them off of comfort, let's get the draft that we want, not what they need, I can see why they would go for that angle. And it goes, hey, what in this matchup would you not want to play against? And if Juan goes, hey, I don't want to play against the Ornn, would make a lot of sense. And now with Trundle pickups, we have 4 Freljord champions and a robot for the side of Skeletons, and that leaves the question
That's too glacial.
Yeah, it's
They're
like
stacking the stun.
Is this a Trundle top or is it a Trundle jungle? Is it a Volibear top, Volibear jungle? We won't really know until we get into the actual game. But this was a champion I wasn't gonna
top lane, right? Because thinking about it, right, you obviously want this sort of poke comp, right? You have the Varus, you have the Karma, you have the Gragas to sort of disengage, and you have the Gangplank, all of these super range champions that sort of fight back against the low range, the lack of engage that the Skeletons sort of don't have, right? The big way to engage right now is that arrow, but if Karma just goes for that Mikhail's Crucible early on, it feels like you can just outrange them, outpoke them, and deal with that. And I do like the Akali here, being able to sort of match side lane pressure, but also be able to dive that backline as a way, once that pokes come out, being able to capitalize on it on a flank angle, I think is definitely a very good option here.
So I'm really excited for this Akali pick, because when I was casting way back when we were doing the exhibition games to figure out, so captains could scout players, figure out who they want to draft, Neversaw played an Akali game, and I got to cast it. And I think they dropped 13 kills, and they said if I'm ever feeling it and I'm feeling good, I'm gonna play the Akali. So they got to be feeling great to be able to be picking this one up here in a kind of a must-need win. It feels like, in a way, just so you can push yourself up in the standings with Ronan right behind you and trying to catch back up to Wizards, who you're looking to face down the line and really bounce back from a rough week last week after losing that series. So I mean, I do like what you said also about this Carmen building Mikhail's Crucible first. Also having the CC cleanse with the oranges from Gangplank, it can be really hard when really the only hard engage on the side of Skeletons has is that Ash Arrow or landing a huge shockwave on top of the Volibear ultimate. So if you can mitigate the engage and cleanse some of that CC away on the side of Raiders, it can really help with the way you want to play, because you kind of want a chaotic team fight in a way. You have this Akali, you have this Gragas who are going to be displacing people. Akali's going to be diving the back line, doing everything she does there, being that shadow assassin. So I do like what Raiders does. They're going to have to actually make it work this time and cause a lot of chaos in the team fights like they wanted to in game number 1. But Skeletons doing more of the same, having that strong team fight, having that strong jungle support combo that can invade, get a lot of these advantages. I mean, both teams kind of drafting similar to what they did in game number 1. It's now just going to be on that execution level again.
Yeah, and when it comes down to execution, I tend to favor the simpler team comps, but I still feel like Raiders have it in them to pull it off. They just need to make sure they're not getting as bullied as they did last game. And the Gragas and Volibear, you don't win those early fights, right? So Gragas it definitely feels like they might be anticipating a lot of the engages, a lot of the same pressure, and instead of trying to fight back, they're going to sort of go the paths of least resistance and just let it happen, right? Go for more of this ganking style playstyle, maybe go for the counter invades on a different side of the map, and just try and sort of avoid the Volibear rather than run headfirst into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be... Spartan's going to have to do the opposite of what they did game number 1. They're going to have to find where Iconic is and stay away from him, because like you said, he does not win those early fights. This Volibear does so much damage in the early levels, and even later in the game, because you do normally go that AP variant to have that extra damage instead of that tank one, I expect Iconic to do something similar to what he did on the Udyrs, build that first AP item and then build into something more tanky so he can just be a menace on the team, be a menace in the backline, and never really go down. So it's really going to be Spartans having to path away and find where the jungler is so he doesn't get into that fight again and end up going down early, because once again, Neversaw not going to have the early pressure in the mid lane. He's going to be getting pushed in by Bob Robertson on the Soriana, having that range melee again. So you definitely do not want to be fighting at these Scuttle Crabs again early as Spartan. You want to be getting your own jungle this time and staying safe, looking for big flash body slams, huge explosive casks in team fights and stuff like this. So really going to be an interesting how the Raiders have adapted in this game.
Yeah, but with saying that, we are going to cut it to a short break while we wait on Spec Delay. When we come back, we will be in-game for the second match. We'll have to see if Skeletons are going to be able to take 2-0 or if Raiders are going to be able to bring themselves back. Don't go anywhere. All right, everyone, we are back in game for the second round. This time, it's going to be Raiders on the red side, Skeletons on the blue. Got that counter pick in the game. Never saw the Akali, something that she's historically performed very well on, and something that should be very fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting mid lane matchup this time. And Islanders, like you said, is going for this lethality Varus. We see he has the Arcane Comet, and it is the Trundle top lane, so going to have that split push pressure come the later stages of this game. Could be a tough matchup for Cake up here, so going to see how he has to play this one out. Choosing to go for the Cole early, just really looking to farm up and abuse that GP passive of getting bonus gold. But so far, a standard 5-point from both sides. Iconic trying to walk in and get some vision. Spartans just hanging around in the mid lane, not really sure where everybody else is on the map, but they know that Chief has walked into this bot lane to get a ward in the blue side somewhere, not exactly sure where though.
Yeah, and you can already see Neversaw fighting back against Iconic, trying to get that ward down, but a lot of these early levels, especially for the Akali, rely a lot on energy management because you don't have mana, you don't need to worry about running out. But the amount of spells you can cast, you can get, what, 2 Qs off before you run out of energy? So you definitely have to keep that in mind. And some nice early poke down from Islanders, but going for the Arcane Comic, definitely going for this more poke-oriented build, and that does seem like the Raiders' game plan is playing for that long-range threat.
Yeah, they're going to have to set up on these objectives early, because once again, they don't really have a frontliner. It's basically just Spartans on this Gragas, who's probably going to be building a lot more AP than he is tank. So really going to have to set up early, look for poke with this Varus, look for poke from this Karma, and then look for a flank angle from Neversaw on this Akali to get onto the back line. But like you said, oh my gosh, one kick.
Oh, didn't pop the ghost though, so not going to force out Juan's flash just yet. But yeah, this is what I was talking about, right? The early match, not as good, and being able to land that sort of side lane pressure is going to make the Trundle a pretty decent threat. And ooh, not looking great. A disconnect from Spartan. Hopefully not going to last too long. Hopefully this is not the classic case of the Spartan internet.
Yeah, that would not be fun for the side of Raiders, considering I might get hit up and asked to get pulled away from the cast, but who knows what's going to happen. Hopefully Spartan's able to figure this one out and get connected quickly. But I mean, like you said, it's going to be tough in these early levels up in this top lane for Cake. We saw already Volca pushing the advantage on this Trundle with that lethal tempo doing so much damage early.
Alrighty. Looks like we're going to have to sort of chill a little bit, try and figure it out. I say that I don't know how long this is going to last. We do know that sometimes these pauses can last a while, especially if it's an internet issue. So we are going to cut it to a short break. When we come back, we will hopefully have things explained. Things hopefully won't last too long, so stick around. We shouldn't be there too long as we figure out these technical issues. All right, we're back. Figured it out. Just a quick reconnect. Spartan figured everything. Just clearing those wolves. So no camp reset either. Very, very helpful. They were quick on that pause. And should just be able to go over the wall, take those raptors, and everything is right with the world.
Yeah, and they will see him on those Raptors just because of that early ward that was placed by Iconic, so they know exactly where the Scrags is. But now he's going to be in trouble because it's not Iconic invading him this time. It's Volca and it's Bob Robertson once again not letting Spartans have a fun series here tonight just because of the wave pressure that they do have instantly going and trying to invade him on this red buff. Luckily, he's Gragas, has a little bit more of mobility, able to escape over the wall with that body slam, and then just goes right back onto his red buff. But now, because he is slightly delayed, Boulder and Enders could be in so much trouble here.
Yeah, already the exhaust coming through, but is going to manage to get the cleanse, the Sky Splitter, and this stun. The slow's coming out as well. A nice root there from Boulder, though. Going to try and get the impaired shield. The Mantra going to block it up. Now, AFK Boulder probably going to get stunned, but with enough health pool, should be able to make it out alive. And using a lot of sums, but still being able to make it out as well. Being able to take out Edeconic's Flash and Chief's Exhaust. Not a bad trade. Not too sad about that. Edeconic trying to get the regank, but spotted it a bit early. A flash through from Chief, who did not realize that his team wasn't with him, and that was a complete waste.
Yeah, little too aggressive there out of Chief, but really well played by Enders and Boulder to play out of that one. I liked how Boulder decided to now. Ooh, Iconic could be in a little trouble here. Never saw looking for something.
Oh, steals away the Scuttle, I believe, and that's going to give Ianders enough speed to get in. And Edeconic, without any flash, is just going to go down. It's going to be the solo kill from Neversaw, stealing away not only the Scuttle, but also the kill. And Edeconic's happening to him what happened to Spartan last game. Not as fun when it happens, getting a taste of your own medicine. Now the gank onto Valka, who is going to pop the Ghost, going to try and get away, but one more Q from Juan will take it out. And it's 2 kills already over to Raiders. Looking pretty good. A flash forward from Bob Robertson, though, and Neversaw not really respecting the poke, realizing they were very low. And yeah, Akali with just the Doran shield, unfortunately not going to be able to match the Orianna with the extra amp tome.
Yeah, and I mean, despite Neversaw going down there, that is kind of how you wanted this early game to start as Raiders, considering that you did get that first blood onto Neversaw. I did not expect Akali to get a solo first blood by themselves, but then a nice gank by Spartans in the top lane. They were buffered out of their body slam by a nice pillar of ice by Volca, but it didn't matter in the end. They were able to get that kill onto Wand Cake, which is kind of exactly where you also want some of this early gold influx onto. So Raiders really on a better start to this game comparatively to they were in game number 1, and gonna look to carry the momentum through that one. Iconic not having as much of an early game impact as he did previously, despite that good gank that didn't turn into kills but turned into almost all the summoners going down in the bot lane for Raiders. So I mean, I speak of the devil and he shall arrive. He's coming back for round 2.
Yeah, wants it again without any flashes, without any cleanses. This should be a pretty early easy setup. Sky Splitter comes down, the damage goes through. Ianders will fall first, followed shortly thereafter by AFK Boulder, who tries to flash forward, get a Mancha Q onto Ixie, but isn't going to be able to finish off the kill, wasting that flash, and 2 kills go over, claiming the feat of Warfare for Skeletons as they turn their eyes towards the Mountain Drake.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a nice idea by AFK Boulder, but Ixie still having that barrier, able to just block all of that Mantra Q damage, not ends up going down there. So that is the Warfare picked up for the side of Skeletons. A nice repeaking by Iconic, knowing that all the summoners were still down for the spot lane. But now it's going to be Grubs being taken up here by the side of Raiders. So another trade on this first set of neutral objectives. But Raiders shouldn't be too discouraged out of how this early game has gone. They got some nice early plays. They're just going to have to look to recover after what's happened bot lane and be able to turn it back around in their favor.
Yeah, and you can already see, low man on Bob Robertson means Neversaw is going to be able to bully her out. So that Orianna going to be forced back. But yeah, like you said, that big gank at the bot side and the kill returned in the mid lane was sort of what made, was the deciding factor. So not as great as you thought. You know, you thought you had this great early game that sort of gets turned around. Still with a small gold lead, but losing the Drake, trading it for the Grubs. I think you're happy with that, knowing that you have the siege, but it's still not the way you want it to go, and has the cleanse, but without a flash, Edeconic wants another one. The cleanse comes through, but it's a little bit too late. The Sky Splitter goes down, Ixie flashes forward, and they're going to be able to pick up another kill, and they are just not respecting Edeconic and his relentless Volibear ganks.
Yeah, he has set up a tent on this bot lane, knowing that they still had no summoners. That is 3 ganks in a row down here to the bot side. And like you said, Raiders did have a slight gold advantage before that, but you also got to remember, it's kind of fake just because Gangplank prints free money when he gets those kills onto the minions with his Q. So really, it was much more even than it actually looked on that. So you know, Skeletons playing really well once again in this early game. Raiders, they were off to a good start. A little bit of struggle right now, but they could look for something bot lane, but they gotta know that Iconic is still here.
Yeah, the arrow comes through and does have the Stormbringer. AFK Boulder going down. Ixie with the arrow. Are going to use that ultimate to try and slow things up. Ionders, though, without the ultimate, without that arrow, isn't going to be able to land anything. You can see Spartan down here does have the cast. Going to try, but it's Sky Splitter slow. Make sure that the rest of the Skeletons get out to safety.
And they have to start playing so much more respectful in this bot lane for Raiders. Iconic has just been down here this whole time. The fact that they keep walking forward, they keep disrespecting it, is really costing them, because now Ixie's on 3 kills on this Ashe, and like you said, it feels like Ashe doesn't do a lot of damage, but if you get 3 free kills before 10 minutes, you're going to be so accelerated into this game that it doesn't matter that you can fall off in the later stage of the game damage-wise. You're going to be so accelerated that it feels like that never actually does happen.
Yeah, already picking up the boots there just to get that extra movement speed. Juan, though, running down Valka right now. Valka going to turn around with Subjugation, try and take the 1v1. Has to be careful, though, from the true damage. Is going to be able to break one of those barrels. That's going to be a big deal. Juan, use the orange with some really good spacing. Needs one more Q, but the Ghost runs out just as Valka gets away. And is going to be able to take it back there.
Yeah, that was close. I thought Juan was going to be able to go that one just a few seconds away from that flash being up. If he did have it, flash Q would have been the end of Valka there, but able to get away from that one. Ghost really helping out in that exchange, but oh no. Iconic is in the top lane. Juan's going to go down.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. Juan does not have the damage.
Oh,
Juan
wait.
trying, maybe flashing over the wall, though, to out safety. Unfortunately, Iconic has the flash just to match it up. The Sky Splitter will come down, and the pillar seals Juan's fate as a bite comes out. Bob Robertson gonna be the one to help out, giving the assist credit, just passing it around. And it's gonna be Valka who ends up taking the kill after all is said and done.
Yeah, and Juan played that out the best he could. Thought he could get away with the flash, but Iconic, having one of his own, just follows it up and is able to get the kill on the Valka, which is gonna feel nice. So, you know, Raiders gonna have to find a way to slow this game down, look to scale up into this game with the characters that they have. Akali needs to get to 1 to 2 items. Same with the Gangplank, but I say it again, and they're fighting once again in the spot lane.
Yeah, and you can see just how good the Braum is at blocking a lot of this poke damage. You know, even with the charged up arrow, it does basically nothing, so they have to force Chief out before they're able to sort of bully in Ixie and actually get that damage down. Now, the full engage from Neversaw, realizing Bob Robertson doesn't quite have the mana, going to be able to land the perfect execution, and a beautiful execution there from Neversaw on the play, going to be able to land the solo kill in the mid lane.
Yeah, and that was just the Akali mechanics being shown off. Use the flash to be able to make sure that everything was sticking on there. But like you said, especially in that bot lane when Chief has that shield up, even with the full stack passive from Ionders and a fully charged arrow, I think he took like 20 damage. So it literally did nothing. So they're, like you said, they're going to have to find a way to get Chief out of this lane if they ever want to pressure Ixie, considering he doesn't have the cleanse. So if that corrupted chains hits, it's just a follow-up CC stun from Boulder, and they're able to possibly get some damage down. But now Neversaw in a little bit of trouble here.
Yeah, has to be careful. Should be able to make it out, but it's actually Bob Robertson turning around. The trouble is there. Finally, the barrage coming through, and it's going to be Neversaw picking up her 3rd kill of the game. And honestly, this is kind of where you want the gold, right? Neversaw is really looking to be your carry this game. The rest of the lane's not doing so hot. You know, Juan doing pretty nice up there, but that Gangplank needs a lot of time to scale. Spartan in the jungle, you know, same thing. The Cosmic Drive, a bit more of that utility. Bot lane, not as accelerated. So making sure you can get a lot of that gold onto the Akali, that big playmaker, is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and we saw how impactful that cast from Spartans was to able to pull Chief away from Bob Robertson. They were able to turn that around, especially a nice cannon barrage out of Wancake to be able to get that slow, so Neversaw was able to get in range to pick up that 3rd kill. That's exactly what we want for Raiders. That is exactly what you don't want if you are the Skeletons, because of how disruptive this Akali could be on your backside. Oh no.
Oh, the engage there, and it's going to be the Shockwave pulling back Neversaw, giving the shutdown over to Bob Robertson. And it feels like every time Neversaw gets this lead, she just overextends just a little bit instead of taking the back and ends up throwing it away.
It was a from the base crystal arrow out of Ixie that ended up hitting Neversaw in the mid lane. It was actually what spelt the death for her there. So really nice by Ixie to be able to do that one and then to follow up by the rest of the team from Skeletons. But regardless, like we said, even though Neversaw does go down there, that is still 3 kills on your colleague. That is still a threat onto Ixie and Bob Robertson come the late game. So it is where you want the gold. You just, you know, you have to kind of use all of your CDs as a Kali in these first early levels before you hit that level 11 and have that fully ranked Q to clear these waves, and that's actually what caused her to go down there. And now there's going to be more fighting in this top lane.
Yeah, Juan getting very low, and the Pillar spells his doom. Lethal tempo stacked, and Valka picks up the kill. Now trying to turn on to Spartan, who might be able to land this 1v1, but a lot of burst coming through already. Gonna make sure Valka can't get any more healing, and just a couple more combos will do it. A big cast. Now on the bot side, a bit of a failed dive there from Ediconic, as 2 kills are already taken out. It's going to be Boulder picking him up. Now Neversaw down here to try and land the kills out. Ediconic without a flash, without a ultimate, going to be a lot harder. AFK Boulder trying to land it, but it's going to be Neversaw with the perfect execution that ends up picking the kill. Bob Robertson has to be careful landing under the tower, but a nice QW forces Neversaw back. And without the Shuriken flip landing, Neversaw and AFK Boulder are going to have to walk themselves out of there. But a nice sequence of plays there for Raiders to pick up the slack that they were feeling a bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if that Shuriken flip hits, that's a double kill for Neversaw because they had the second charge of the perfect execution, which would have spelt the end of Bob Robertson there. And I mean, Bob Robertson still has to be careful here because if a Shuriken flip does hit onto Bob Robertson, never mind, it might be the other way around here. I lied. Nice cannon barrage by Juan Cake to be able to help out his mid laner and picks up a kill for himself, which is also really helpful for the side of Raiders because you do want Juan Cake with those barrels to be an absolute force come this late game. They can deal so much damage, especially if you are experienced on this champion. So I know there's a little tech that I never actually knew about Gangplank and his barrels, that they can actually infinitely store the Sheen proc. So if you put one down, you'll get a Sheen proc, and if you auto it, it will hold that Sheen proc until you choose to pop it again. So it does Sheen damage on barrels that you don't expect them. Yes, I found this out from the Baus getting coached on Gangplank. It's such a niche mechanic that I never actually knew about that can be so impactful if you are experienced on this champion. It can deal way more burst damage than is ever expected. And I'm always like, why does this champion do so much damage? And that's why, because these players have understood how that actually works and are able to actually take so much advantage from it.
That's a crazy pull. I never would have assumed it worked like that. That sounds like a bug, though.
I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
Really? That sounds like a minion storing the Sheen damage, because it's like... That sounds like an everything is a minion, like, coding situation, you know what I mean? Like, that seems like a Riot classic, but... that is cool. I did not know it did that, but that would apply to the burst. That would help a lot. And yeah, no, not just the barrels though, but also like the ultimate pressure provided on the map by this Gangplank has just helped out so many times. Now they engage though with the arrow, and Iander's walking a bit too far forward, not going to be able to flash that arrow, and not showing respect to the glacial bot lane here, going to 1 and 4, and Iander's you know, maybe stay at range. You know, you're building lethality. You don't really need to walk up for these autos.
Yeah, and, you know, the one thing is, you mentioned it, and I, you know, chimed in on it, but I would like to see Boulder build a Mikhail's Crucible sooner rather than later, choosing to go to the Malignance for the first item. That's such a good item on Karma. I can't fault him for going that, because you do get that mantra up way sooner and lets you actually contribute a lot more to team fights. But if he does get that Mikhail's, it's going to be a lot easier for Ianders to play this game alongside Neversaw as well, who, if they are hit by an arrow, you can just also cleanse them, or even yourself, to get yourself out of dangerous situations. So I would like to see them build that sooner rather than later to be a more utilitarian to the team instead of looking for this like full damage poke Karma. But regardless, it was a really good play by Ixie, by Chief, layering up that CC, the ultimates, everything to be able to get Enders another death on this game, despite, you know, he's still up CS, but he's 1 and 4. He's going to be down in gold to Ixie, who does have 4 of these kills for his team.
Yeah, and the big thing here, you know, that Ashe just does so much damage now if they have the wild arrows finish, now if they have this gold advantage. So you really have to be careful. You really should be playing around this Gangplank, around this Akali, around these solo laners that are so strong at this stage in the game, rather than, you know, trying to hover towards it. And that's sort of what they want to do. And at this point, I think AFK Boulder and Islanders more so need to realize that they're in the sort of cover fire role. They're more of this sort of supportive bot lane rather than stars of the show. Nice cast. Is going to be flashed by Ediconic. Going to be able to back it out. Now Islanders doing some damage. Failed shield there from Chief. Edith copping very low. Never saw hit with it. The shockwave comes forward, but Spartan's going to be able to use that Valley Slam out. Islanders flashing back. A lot of poke damage coming through. Valka already on the rotation, and both teams, both low, both fighting for priority over this drag. They do see Valka, an engage there from Spartan to try and finish it off. The flash forward from Neversaw to try and land the perfect execution. Gonna try and land it up, and it's gonna be a double. The Shuriken flip back to safety. Now Islanders getting run down by Valka. It's gonna be one kick in the top side, being able to get that tower. Does have the TP. Gonna try and back it up. We'll have to see if they're gonna be able to turn their eyes back towards that dragon. They even want to fight it. They spot out Ixie and Neversaw going forward with the Shuriken flip, trying to land those kunai, but not quite gonna be able to land the 5-point strike there. And I feel like they could have TP'd in with Juan and won the rest of this fight, but they're going to try and attempt it anyway. Neversaw and Boulder trying to poke it out, see if they can delay this. Finally, the TP coming through from Juan. Valka does have to be careful, alone in that pit now, and it's going to be focused up by Islanders, Neversaw, and Boulder. Finally, Juan Cake here. Does have to be careful. Neversaw going very low, and it's going to be the arrow that finishes it off. Sorry, the pistol, actually. It's Juan that takes it out. The shutdown, though, for Bob Robertson is going to be a massive gold value for the Skeletons, but it's still a 3k gold lead. The Raiders coming back in this mid lane with a number of great team fights.
Yeah, I mean, Neversaw played that beautifully. We saw them line up that perfect execution to get that double kill for themselves and then be a big factor when they're on that dragon was the Skeletons. And you talked about what you wanting Juan to TP in. He does go for it later. Oh, I think somebody's in this bush.
Yeah, has to be careful. Juan flashing out to safety. Ediconic, though, going under tower with the Stormbringer. Bob Robertson popping very low. Should eventually go down. Maybe. The cast not going to finish it off. Spartan not going to finish the job. Trying to channel that cast, get himself out, but it's going to be a double kill, and Spartan just not committing. You know, will they, won't they? Constantly, but doesn't end up going. Now going forward, Neversaw might have gotten themselves in a bit too much danger, though, as she tries to go forward. The perfect execution gets a lot of damage onto Ixie, but the stun inevitably comes out, and it's going to be Valka picking up the kill. Raiders, just as quickly as they gain that lead, to throw it right away. The Ruinous Atacon going to get them so much value, as well as those 3 kills, almost completely evening up the gold.
Yeah, Juan not knowing that Iconic was sitting in that bush is actually what ended up paying dividends for the side of the Raiders there. And Bob Robertson barely lives even through the explosive cast that came out from Spartans, not able to pick up the kill on that one. Now there's going to be Otacon over to the side of Skeletons, who, you know, we're down a little bit in this game and able to turn it back around. But AFK Boulder and Enders want to look for something here, not willing to give it up. But nothing coming out of that one. A nice pillar out of the side of Valka to keep them away from that. So Raiders maybe overextending a little bit, getting a little bit too hyphy with what they were doing in the mid lane and, you know, throughout the game so far. Ends up costing them a little bit, because those petals do pay dividends come the late game, especially with how much XP that they do give, and that adaptive force can actually be super impactful in these late game team fights.
Yeah, and it is just a lot of value in general that you get from these petals. I think it's like 100 something per petal, so getting a lot of those is just a massive gold swing in terms of value for the team, not to mention the big XP lead that it can help get you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Neversaw had the right idea to try to pick at least one person off on that tower, because I don't think they were going to be able to get it. But we saw the power of the Locket on Chief on this one, keeping his AD carry alive, not able to get that execute, was Neversaw at the end of that fight. And Valka also just doing a really good job of playing this barrel game against Juan Cake. And speaking of which, Juan Cake's going to get dove here.
Yeah, Juan, just a matter of time. Trying to try and pop the cannon barrage to clear out the wave, but the Stormbringer comes through, and it's going to be Ida with the dunk that takes out Juan there. And when you're in that situation, you just kind of got to accept your fate. You know, go for the CS, but it is an unfortunate situation. Raiders, they were looking good for a while, but Skeletons bring it right back around, had that early lead, and they don't want to lose it just yet. Going to be able to take out the Otacon, drag it up in 2 minutes, but Baron spawning in 3, so we'll have to see which one they prioritize, if they try and just take the drag into it, if they try and fight around it. But a lot of pressure still on. Ixie on the 2-item spike. Gonna need some AD soon. Has a lot of that attack speed items, but not as much of that that hard hitting, especially into the squishy team. I would like to see, you know, an Infinity Edge hopefully come out soon.
Yeah, I assume he's probably gonna tend towards it fourth item. Actually, it looks like he's gonna be building towards that last whisper as his third item, which I think is fine because Ash can't actually deal crit damage the way that the character is, you know, coded and made. When you crit, it's a critical slow, so your slows are increased, but it doesn't deal any extra crit damage. But so I
With the
find
slows, you do have that enhanced AD value, right? So it does.
exactly.
There is still a lot of reason to go for it, and especially into the squishy team, I think it's a good option, right? I don't think you're going to be standing in the back autoing as much, so I think getting more value out of each individual auto is probably the play you want. I also think saving the Infinity Edge for fourth item and maybe going what looks like an armor penetration item here doesn't make a lot of sense, given that there is literally no armor on the Raiders right now.
I think it's fine on Ash specifically to go this because now you're just basically going to be dealing true damage, which is kind of what you needs to do. I think, you know, you can delay it on just like 180 carry, and I do think it is Ash to go for that IE fourth item. I think it'll be fine, but it looks like he might be trending towards it now, picking up that BF sword in his inventory. So maybe, you know, hearing what we were saying, somehow building towards that item now. But I mean, Raiders, regardless, they're going to have to look for a really strong team fight here, and that arrow's coming out.
Yeah, the engage from it, but the Enchanted Crystal Arrow not quite going to land. Never saw now on the flank, going forward onto Bob Robertson. Popping into it, going to be able to flash the Braum ultimate. In the perfect execution, they are going to be able to take out that Orianna before the shockwave comes out. Now the poke coming through. You can see Enders and AFK Boulder trying to trade, but it's going to be Ixie with the return kill. Ediconic now going forward, going to try and fight AFK Boulder. Never saw still on the side of the fight, trying to find someone, but this team moves as a unit, and Enders not quite able to land the poke that you would want at this stage in the game. Just really doesn't do that much damage as the flash forward comes out. The Shuriken, and they are going to take it back in. Unfortunately, it is going to lead to Neversaw's death, as Ixie picks up another kill, and it's going to be an ace for the Skeletons as they get that Hextech Dragon, putting themselves on 2, and Valka keeps running down that top lane tower.
Yeah, and he solo killed Wand Cake, so that's even worse, because now Valka just gets so much free time with those 3 grubs on these objectives. He might actually be able to end the game by himself because Trundle is so good at taking these turrets, these objectives, and everything like that. But choosing, you know, everybody's coming off the respawn. Not going to go for that yet, but now he's just going to rotate into the mid lane and look for the pressure there. So Skeletons, you know, turning this game around back into their favor, looking for the crucial fights, getting big plays out of everybody on their side, and Raiders really going to have to start looking for, you know, angles that aren't expected to get their ways back into this game.
Yeah, gonna be a big deal. We'll have to see what they end up going for, if they are gonna try and pressure this Baron, or if they want to sort of keep that standard forecourt, keep Valk in the side lane like we were talking about, right? The big strength of this Trundle, making sure that the Raiders cannot get this big grouped up team comp with all of the poke that they really wanted to in draft.
Yeah, I mean, we see Valka going towards the bot lane now. His eyes are set on that next inhibitor, away from the Baron, which is crucial because, yeah, Juan can be there in a way with that Cannon Barrage, but if he's going to TP to the fight, Valka's just going to take the base, so it becomes like kind of this game of cat and mouse. It's the issue with playing against split push, of knowing, like, hey, if I leave here, we're going to lose this, but what do we gain if we win the team fight? And that's a big if at this point in the game for the side of Raiders, just because of how Skeletons has been playing. They are this 4-man unit that you talked about. They're never by themselves. They're always 2, 3, 4 members anytime they look for these plays. So it's going to be really difficult for the side of Raiders to get what they want. They know that they're on the Spartan. They haven't warded up. Spartans is on the top side, and they do take this relatively fast thanks to the Ash. So Raiders going to have to get here fast and look for the perfect team fight for themselves.
Yeah, and it all starts to be engaged. Neversaw already on the flank looking for it. And if they're able to catch out Bob Robertson, it's going to be a big deal. Unfortunately, the cast not quite at the right angle. Going to be the early root up, but Chiefs just going to be able to manage to walk it out. Valka with a nice pillar there. Wancake's going to come in, but it might not be in the greatest situation. Valka picks up the first kill. Now Neversaw has to be careful, trying to get more in the back line, but is going to be stunned up by Ixie. Tries to use the perfect execution. Going to be able to finish it off with a Shark and flip, as Valka looks for Enders. Going to be able to land the pillar, and it should just be a matter of time. Enders without any summoners, without the ultimate, but not going to have enough follow-up, so it will just be a 1-for-1 so far. But however, the health advantage is still in favor of Skeletons, so they are going to turn their eyes right back towards that Baron. Do still have that smite advantage now that the jungler is down, now that Spartan isn't there. However, Enders, you know, could manage to land a big arrow if they see it. Unfortunately, Iyender's not going to go for it, not going to go for that big steal. And now the blast cone in over the wall might not have been the best idea. Ixie 1v2ing on the right side of that fight, takes out 2, picks up another one. Now Neversoft forced a shuriken flip over the wall and run back towards their base as the Skeletons have completely blown this game wide open.
Yeah, that might just be the end of the game here because they have Baron, they have Volca on this Trundle. They could just march down mid and look for the end there. Iconic is fighting 1v2 in the top side here on Neversaw and Spartans, and regardless of that, they can just keep stalling them as long as they want as Ixie pushes down this mid lane. It looks like this is going to be the win here for Skeletons. Spartans and Neversaw going to have to be heroes here, have to get the perfect play and look for something away back into this game, a way to stop the push that is happening right now at Skeletons. And they're not even going for it. Ixie and Chief are in the base. They are ending the game right now.
Yeah, they just want to close this out. Fortunately, don't have the minions to do it, so they are going to have to bait it out. However, on the backside of that fight, it is going to be Neversaw trying to land the 1v1. Unfortunately, Ixie with a nice auto there, going to be able to take it out. Iconic can take the back. They don't want to end the game just yet. They don't think they have that priority. Going to turn their eyes towards that bot lane tower, maybe go for that inhibitor. The arrow goes wide, so they might be able to do it, but a big shockwave lands, and Valka picks up the kill. That Triumph heal going to help out a lot. Spartan going in. They have so much damage, but the Cannon Barrage is not going to be able to finish them off. They've just been doing so well about these fights. Big Glacial Fissure lands, and it's going to be another one. Ixie running them down has just been so strong in the Ashe this game. One, the last one left alive, and it's going to be an ace for Skeletons for the second fight in a row as they prove themselves not fraudulent, take out the Raiders in a 2-0 win.
Yeah, and I mean, they tried to use everything on Volca there at the end of the game, and just that Trundle passive kept him alive for so long on top of that red buff healing that he was getting. I mean, Raiders, they looked so good in this early game and just were not able to carry that over the finish line. Skeletons fought their way back into this game and played it out perfectly. A fight around the Otacon was really what turned the momentum for them, and they just snowballed that into a dominant about like last 10-15 minutes of that game to get themselves a 2-0 victory here.
Yeah, really great plays from the Skeletons. Raiders, they had their moments, but that last game really felt like Neversaw, got the leads, then kind of threw them away, and the rest of the team just wasn't really on the same page, it felt like. Raiders just, big early start, but, the last couple of weeks, they've been faltering a bit.
Yeah, it's been a tough 2 weeks in the Raiders camp, and Skeletons bouncing back here. I mean, we saw, the stats before each game that the Skeletons were 4-4 on the season in games. So they either win 2-0 or they lose 0-2, and there's no in between for that team, and it continues to stay the same here for tonight. They do get the 2-0 win, so they're going to pump them up to 6-4 on the season, be 3-2 alongside the Raiders, and look to, start to push up in the standings. I think they've already played the Wizards and Ronin, so I don't know if there's a way to catch them. They will need a lot of help from the other teams up here in the Sapphire division, but Raiders gonna really need to start figuring out what they need to do to start righting the ship and get back on track like they were in the first half of the season.
Yeah, and we'll see. Raiders gonna have to see if they can bring back that early fire that they had, or if they're gonna keep faltering. But Skeletons, had a rough one against the Dragons, had a couple falters, but the Wizards are the top team, so we'll give them that. The Snakes, maybe not the greatest win. However, winning against the Raiders, I think, solidifies that, yeah, wasn't a fluke. They still have it in them. Looked a bit shaky at some points. There's definitely some pain points they need to work out. But if they can perform like this in the rest of their matches, they should have a pretty easy time maintaining that 3rd, 4th seed.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good showing out of Skeletons here. Dominant game 1, comeback winning game number 2, so really starting to look good, look like that team a lot of people expected after the draft at the start of the season.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. It has been a very fun couple of games. Getting out a bit early tonight, but next week should have some banger games. Things are looking good for the next couple weeks. So, I hope everyone keeps tuning in. Things are looking great going into the back half of the season, and hopefully the Gauntlet will be exciting as well. But for now, I have been When It Rains. Joining me has been Chung, filling in for Becky. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Chippy on the production as always. Thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you to everyone who works on this, and have a great night.